To thank Coco Cuthbertson and Interurban for hosting us here today. They become part of this history as well, and we're very grateful for their support. Thank you. And I also failed to mention that we are privileged to be on Coast Salish land here today, so I really wanted to make sure that I made that statement. It's very important, particularly in the sex work community, I think. So we're happy to take your questions now from the media. Please stick up your hand. Yes.
My name is Laura. I'm from the Province newspaper. Some critics have said that that the ruling today will make Canada more attractive for sex tourism. What's your response to that?
There's nowhere is that proven to be the case, and I really think that with empirical evidence and data gathered after the laws have been struck down, we'll be able to demonstrate that that is not going to happen. There will not be a sudden flood of women working on the streets and a sudden flood of men coming here seeking sex. I just don't think that that's a realistic outlook of these things. What will happen, though, is that we will be able to move forward on labor organizing, having review boards and complaints processes, so that we can finally weed out some of the exploitative people that do operate in the sex industry and eliminate child exploitation and human trafficking in Canada.
I'm wondering, Christina, if you could explain to us why Ontario, of course, striking down the sections of the criminal code isn't binding on the provinces and territories.
So it's just the way the legal system works that ultimately the courts have jurisdiction over their own provinces. The courts have jurisdiction over their specific province where they exist. And so it's the Supreme Court of Canada that's the ultimate sort of juror, decision maker in these matters. And it's so that you have this appeal process that can go through and up the ranks through the court process in Ontario before it reaches the Supreme Court of Canada. So it's not specific to this case, it's like that in every case, and this is just the court system that we currently have.
So it doesn't render the appeal here moot back to forward in this country?
That's right. So the case in British Columbia can carry on and will carry on. There's distinct aspects of our case that are a bit different than the Ontario case. So we, at the end of the day, if the Ontario case were not successful, which I really believe that it will be, but if it were not, we would be able to carry on in British Columbia because we distinguished our case sufficiently so that we have arguments that weren't heard in Ontario and we could carry on.
I just want to ask you a question. Well, the federal government has already indicated this afternoon that they're going to be appealing this. So is it an appeal back?
Well, we're just glad that the trial level, which is where, so at the Superior Court level where the case was heard, that's where all the evidence was heard. So as it moves up to the Court of Appeal and Supreme Court of Canada, there will be no new evidence that will be heard. It'll just be matters for legal argument. So what I'm thrilled to say is that the court made really important findings of fact based on evidence, and that evidence stands and that will carry on. And now they'll make technical legal arguments based on interpretations of the Constitution and various technical points, but the evidence is established at this point and is very solid and very strong. And the Superior Court, the Court of Appeal and Supreme Court of Canada, will be ruling on technical legal issues as opposed to the evidence as a whole.
Is it possible to do some one-on-ones because the acoustics are really, really bad?
Yes, it is possible. And so no further questions from the media? So we also wanted to give the community an opportunity to ask anything that you might be curious about as regards the decision, or even to make any statement that you felt comfortable in making today. So, Trina.
I have a question. So if someone in British Columbia were to be charged under one of these laws, would they be able to use this court decision to defend themselves in British Columbia?
So the decision is persuasive. So it's not binding, but persuasive. So it's important. The court would look at it and they would consider it, but it doesn't define what the courts here have to do. It just says what they might think about in terms of their analysis. So what often happens, though, and this happened in terms of the cannabis movement, medical marijuana movement, so forth, is that sometimes when charges are laid in other provinces, people file constitutional challenges because they know very well that there's a binding decision that's going to come down the pipe, and that the local courts say, well, let's just wait and see. So sometimes, and I'm not saying this, that we should all run out and open a body house, because you could be prosecuted still in British Columbia, and that's an important point to make. But what does happen from time to time is that people say, well, let's just hang on, let's see what happens, whether these laws are even legitimate because of a case going on in Ontario. So it may be that the cases are slowed down here in anticipation of that case.
In regards to a timeline, how long in the future, or how far away in the future do we see it going to the Supreme Court?
So that's a good question. How long till it gets to the Supreme Court of Canada? They have 30 days to appeal the decision, and then it could take up to a year for them to actually argue the case before the Court of Appeal in Ontario, and then similarly another year or so to get Supreme Court of Canada. So I'm thinking at least 2 years before we have a final decision.
I just want to say that it's been, oh yeah, I don't want to take your mic. It's been 15 long years in my tenure anyway, longer than that, fighting for the rights and prioritization of health and safety for sex workers. And I am just so happy to be here. But like Sue was saying, there's so many women, men, and transgendered individuals that aren't here. They wouldn't believe that this happened, but they aren't here. And so this is our first step. There's a lot that needs to happen next, but I'm just going to bask in the moment, but realize this is change. It's not necessarily better or worse. It's just change. And it's what we do from here that's really going to speak to what Canada's values are all about, and whether we're really interested in prioritizing the health and safety needs of sex workers and really including them into the society that they live in, that they pay taxes in, that they move around in, that they're part of. So can't wait to see the next step.